Hey y'all, how are you doing? I'm a Los Angeles native who ended up moving to Cleveland, Ohio. I'm a lifelong Southern California native and I now live in Cleveland, the one in Ohio, not to be confused with the Cleveland in Tennessee. But anyway, I've been here for a few years and I've been through 3 winters now, so I figured that I was ready to make a culture shock video. So, biggest culture shocks that I experienced. First culture shock is the suburban culture here. Just the overall vibe is a suburban vibe. Cleveland is comprised of suburban towns. So, 90% of Cleveland just feels like the suburbs. And what I mean by that is each town has its own mayor, it has its own rules, it has its own school. So if you're a parent, you need to keep that in mind because in Los Angeles, they have something called the Los Angeles Unified School District. And what that means is that as long as you're a resident of Los Angeles, you could go to any of these schools. You could get bused 30 minutes away, an hour away, an hour and a half away to a school that's 30 miles away, as long as it's part of the LAUSD. Whereas in Cleveland, you have a school that your town is assigned to. So if you're a resident of that town, you need to attend the school that is respective to it. So the school options are not really there. There's no option. You just have one school. So if you're a parent and you want your child to attend a certain school for its academic performance, its test scores, or whatever, how it stacks up against other schools, you have to move to that particular town to attend that particular school because each town has one school. And so you don't have a choice. You have to go to that school. And there are also sort of different rules per city. So for instance, there's a town here called Cleveland Heights. And in Cleveland Heights, they don't issue trash cans. The city does not provide you with trash cans. So this was a culture shock for me. You actually have to lug out the trash bags out to the front of your lawn, out and just place them on the curb. And then the dumpster people will come and pick it up. And I guess they will have to manually throw it into the container as opposed to had they given you a trash can, had they supplied you with a trash can, all you have to do is just wheel it out and place it on the curb, and then they could just use like the mechanical arms on the truck and just carry it and tilt it over the container and put it back down. It could all be automated, so it would be more efficient, but in Cleveland Heights, they prefer to do it the old-fashioned way. And the other thing is, the trash cans here, I haven't seen any town that does it any different, but even in the towns where they do issue you trash cans, they only issue you 2 types. So they give you the black one, because the black one is just for your normal regular trash, and then they also supply you with the blue one for recycling. Whereas in Los Angeles, they also supply you with a third kind. It's a green one for plants, for grass, leaves, anything that has to do with plants and just trees and stuff. So grass clippings, leaves, all of that goes into the green bucket. But here they don't supply you with the green one. So if you have lawn trimmings and stuff from gardening, from landscaping, debris, then you have to go to Home Depot and purchase one of those biodegradable, eco-friendly, disposable bags, paper bags, and you need to fill it up and then place each one on the front of your lawn so they could come pick it up on trash day. So that was also sort of a culture shock. And yeah, so you have to kind of keep in mind that every city, every suburban town has its own rules. And what I also mean by the suburban culture here, as opposed to more of like a metropolitan city vibe that I'm accustomed to in Los Angeles, is, so I've been to other cities, other major cities like Chicago, New York City, Seattle, Boston, and all of those places just have business establishments everywhere you go. Whereas in Cleveland, it's mostly and largely residential. So even when you're passing through a main street with a lot of vehicular traffic, there's still houses left and right. They're just houses, as opposed to in any other city, I find that the main streets would be lined up with business vendors because it just makes more sense. It's just more lucrative, and it's just more optimal use of that space because you have so much exposure and visibility. So it would be better for businesses to be in those areas. It would make sense for it to have commercial zoning as opposed to residential. But no, even in main streets, it's largely residential and you'll still see houses left and right. So it just feels like a really big suburb when you come to Cleveland. Of course, it's different if you live in the downtown area because downtown is a lot more metropolitan. But most of Cleveland, like 90% of it, feels like a suburb. And then secondly, let's talk about demographics. So demographically, it depends what side of Cleveland you live on. So I reside on the east side. The east side of Cleveland has more of a baby boomer generation, baby boomer population. So I interact a lot with baby boomers. Whereas if you live on the west side, it's more Generation X and millennials. But yeah, and then you also have a racial breakdown, right? So I would say that if there was a pie chart, 97% is either Caucasian or African American, and 3% is the miscellaneous races. So the miscellaneous races, I'm not disrespecting anybody, any races, but I'm just consolidating the leftover races that are not Caucasian or African American. And these races would be like Latino, Armenian, Asians, Native Americans, Middle Eastern people. So in Los Angeles, the 97% would look more like probably 30%. So there is a larger, I guess it would be a more even distribution of the races in Los Angeles. Let me see what else. The third big culture shock for me was the wildlife. The wildlife presence here is definitely felt, whereas in Los Angeles, there isn't much of a wildlife presence because you might see a squirrel once a year, if that. You might see pigeons and then some nondescript kind of brown, gray, small birds that are sitting on a tree branch. But besides that, you don't really see many animals. You will see a lot of stray cats. There are a lot of stray cats in Los Angeles that set off car alarms and kind of meow in the middle of the night, and it sounds like a baby's crying, so it could be a little eerie if you're not used to it. And besides that, really you don't see any animals in Los Angeles, whereas in Cleveland you have a pretty substantial population of deer, raccoons, squirrel, chipmunks, geese, coyotes. You have a lot, blue jays, orioles. There are just a lot of animals here, groundhogs. And so I was not expecting it. I was not expecting so many different animals. It's almost like a zoo. There is a price of admission. On one hand, they are cute and cuddly, but at the same time, they do run up your tally. It's part of the cost of living in Cleveland, Ohio, because you might end up getting into an accident with a deer. And in fact, it's happened with me. I ended up getting into an accident with a deer on the road. I ended up striking a deer, or I prefer to think that the deer ended up striking me, and it didn't have insurance, so I had to pay the deductible to get my car repaired. And yeah, it was a hit and run, so I'm not sure if the deer was as fortunate as I was, just medically, because I was fine, I didn't get injured. I heard there are around 500 deaths that result from hitting a deer on an annual basis, so people actually can have fatal consequences from hitting a deer on the road. I got very lucky. I can't speak for the deer. I have no idea what happened to the deer. Also, there was this one instance where raccoons were getting into the attic space in the house. So that actually ended up costing me even more than what I had to pay to repair the car. And it was a long ordeal because not only do you need to pay a licensed trapper to remove the raccoons safely without harming the raccoons, but also you have to pay for the damage to the attic. You have to get it cleaned out, and you also have to get it fixed up. You have to get it repaired. So it was like a multi-layered process. And then the fourth biggest culture shock obviously would be the weather. Obviously there's snow here, there's no snow in Southern California. So that took some getting used to. And then also when it comes to the rain, it's not just one kind of rain. In Los Angeles, it's a very mild kind of rain. It'll usually sprinkle or it'll rain kind of mild. And whenever it rained in Los Angeles, I liked it. I really loved the rain because it seldom rains in Los Angeles. It's actually kind of rare because there's a lot of drought in Los Angeles. And so there's always like a shortage of water. It's kind of interesting because in Los Angeles, they had this campaign called Down with Brown. And this was a campaign that started with Governor Jerry Brown, who was the governor of California. And he started this campaign because of the drought in California. And it was to dissuade people from watering their lawns. So the only way your lawn is going to be green in Los Angeles is if you artificially water it yourself. So he was trying to convince people to stop watering the lawn because there isn't enough water in California to feed it to your lawn. We should conserve it, not squander it on the grass. So he started this campaign called Down with Brown. So it became more in vogue to have brown grass, and this was because it was showing that you were doing your part for like environmental awareness. You're doing your part to conserve water and be eco-friendly. Whereas in other places, if you have brown grass, it means that you have failed and you are not conforming to having a neatly maintained grass. So it's kind of interesting how it works that way, because here the grass grows so quickly, it grows so fast because of the humidity, because it rains so much more. You never have to water your lawn artificially. Just Mother Nature will take care of it. Everything here grows at a rapid pace. And if you don't mow it, if you don't take care of it quickly, then it could get out of control. So you need to be aware of that. And also there's something here called torrential rain. And it could cause flash flooding. In Los Angeles, I never had to deal with torrential rain, but here, the first time I had to deal with it, I'm on the road with my mother, and we were on our way to Walmart because she wanted a bottle of water. So we're on our way. Suddenly, we get struck with this torrential rain. And it was raining so badly, everybody on the road slowed down to a crawl. We were all going 5 to 10 miles per hour. Honestly, we should have just pulled over because the driving conditions were not safe at all. You could barely see anything. It felt like we were driving under a waterfall. And I never experienced anything like that. In fact, I never had so much rain in Los Angeles to the point where I even had to get off the freeway, let alone I'm driving 5 to 10 miles per hour in Cleveland because of the torrential rain. And I finally arrived at Walmart. I pulled up at the entrance, and my mother was only 3 or 4 steps removed from the entrance of Walmart, of the sliding glass entrance, double doors. And I was like, go ahead, mother, go get your bottle of water so that you can hydrate yourself since you're feeling parched. I'll be waiting in the car for you. And my mother was like, over my dead body. I'm not getting out of the car. She was frightened and scared to death because she didn't want to get drenched because it was raining so heavily. And when you're at home and it begins to rain and pour and you get this torrential rainfall, it sounds like an ancient tribe is drumming on your rooftop. It's really loud. The thunder is also a lot louder here. So actually, let me rephrase that. There's actually thunder here, real thunder that you see in horror movies. Whereas in Los Angeles, you might hear a whimper once in a blue moon. And what I mean by blue moon is once every 8 years. You never hear it. It feels like the earth here is closer to the sky because the sound of the thunder is so much more audible and resonant. It actually ends up shaking your house. You could feel, if you're just sitting on a desk and you're writing, you could feel it vibrating. You could feel that desk vibrating. You could feel the reverberation of the sonic boom. And in Los Angeles, the last time I heard a thunder, it was, I think I was just doing nothing. I didn't have the radio on, no television on. I was just writing, so everything was quiet. And I heard a very distant thunder. But then here, it'll just crack, and it just sounds like the sky is being torn in half by God. It's so loud. It'll wake you up if you're sleeping. It'll spook you even if you're awake. It just comes out of nowhere and very abruptly. It'll just crack. And yeah, the wind noise is also louder here. So the wind in Los Angeles is sort of non-existent. Los Angeles is not known for being windy at all. There is this one particular week where they tell you to beware of Santa Ana winds. It happens once a year. And it only lasts like maybe a day or two, where it is windier than normal. But it's not that bad, whereas the windiness here, it could get up to like 80 miles per hour winds. And it's this howling wind. And what it sounds like is it sounds like someone swinging a fly swatter. You know that whoosh sound that a fly swatter makes when you swing it? It sounds like that, but louder. So it sounds like someone is swinging a fly swatter right next to your ear while you're trying to sleep. So you have difficulty falling asleep. And for me, I suffer from a condition called misophonia, so I'm very sensitive to sound. I'm a very light sleeper, so it bothers me, and I have difficulty falling asleep whenever it happens, and you hardly get a wink of sleep that night. But yeah, I think I've covered the bases. I do have a lot of micro level culture shocks. These were more macro level, but anyway, let me know if you have any questions, comments, anything you could relate to. Thank you for listening, and I'll talk to you later. Bye.